After the murders of Tony Tucker and the others at Rettendon, the investigation had almost ground to a halt when a member of the murder gang was persuaded by an undercover cop to turn squealer and shot the others. He admitted that he'd driven the getaway motor on the night of the killings. In exchange for a new identity, he put up the names of Mickey Steele and Jack Worms as the men whose trigger fingers ended the lives of my pals that cold December night. During his time assisting the police and giving evidence at Steele and Worms' trial, he was known simply as Blogs 19. Under the Witness Protection Scheme, all prisoners involved as a witness or supergrasses in major crimes are given a Blogs code name by prison staff so that their real identity remains a secret. He has now vanished off the face of the earth. Every record of his existence has been erased, and I can only say good riddance. His whole involvement in the case stinks, and a lot of people out there still believing the wrong men are in jail for the murders. It was 6 long months before the police made any real progress in finding Tony's killers, as the proverbial wall of silence fell across gangland. It was 6 months in which I'd had time to contemplate the magnitude of what really happened in Workhouse Lane, Rettendon that bleak December night, and absorb the stark realities of what Tony had become. Drug baron, smuggler, killer, addict. A man running out of control on high-octane fuel. As I stood by his marble headstone in Hornchurch Cemetery, I cursed the day that he joined forces with the likes of Patrick Tate and Craig Rolfe. The police breakthrough came on the 15th of May 1996 when Darren Nicholls was taken in for questioning about consignment of cannabis seed from the back of his transit van at his home in Braintree. Police intelligence reports suggested he might be able to provide a vital lead into the hit team that wiped out Tony, Pat and Craig. Like everybody around on the drug scene, I'd heard a dozen names stuck up as the possible killers, and I'd heard persistent claims that it was the old Bill team that had done it. After all, Tony and his firm had made more enemies than friends over the years, and the determinations were endless. Even the wildest theories gained credibility. At that stage, Michael Steele and Jack Worms weren't on my personal list of suspects. Neither was Darren Nicholls, come to that. To me, he was just a bit of a low-life scum who floated around at the bottom of the Essex gangland gene pool as the big boys clambered their way to the top. What I didn't know then was that Steele and Worms were already the prime suspects, but Essex Murder Squad detectives had been unable to come up with any hard evidence to slap the murder charges on them. The police file was apparently bulging with information about massive drug deals, double crosses and threats of violence, all involving the 3 dead men and the Steele and Worms outfit. Customs investigators had been watching all 5 as well, while speedboats loads of puff were brought into Britain from Amsterdam via Belgium and the English Channel. After the murders, Steele and Worms had apparently returned to normal life with such nonchalance that there were no chinks in their behaviour pattern that would give the cops either positive evidence or cause for suspicion. That is, until Darren Nicholls got his collar felt. Although he appeared on the surface to be a bit of a two-bit nobody who dabbled in cannabis, it soon transpired that he was the gangland catalyst whose evidence could be the key to unlocking the Rettendon murder mystery. He'd worked with Tony and his boys, he'd worked with Steele and Worms, and he knew the lot. He knew about the huge shipments of puff smuggled in from Amsterdam by sea, consignments flown in from Belgium by light plane. He knew the names of the drug contacts throughout Britain. He knew who supplied guns to the villains, including a machine gun sold to Tony Tucker and the boys for £300. And most vital of all, he knew whose fingers were on the triggers the night Tony, Pat and Craig were blown away and their corpses left so mutilated that they could only be identified by their fingertips. Nicholls had already been tapped up by a maverick undercover copper who suspected he was deeper into gangland activities than his modest lifestyle suggested, and had put offers to him about sharing the profits of his illicit activities in return for not nicking him. But from what I heard later, Nicholls was having nightmares about what he'd seen that night and lived in dread about being the next to be bumped off if Steele and Worms deemed him to be the weakest link in their murder conspiracy. Within hours of his arrest, he decided to spill the beans. Word leaked out to the firm that Nicholls was about to blow the Essex gangland scene to bits. He started to make statement after statement detailing the criminal enterprises that had made rich men out of Tony and his pals, although I don't include myself in that. At that stage, I hadn't got a pot to piss in, though I know I would have been into it up to my neck if the deal Tony thought he was into had come off and he'd given me the 30 grand he said he would. The police nicked Steele and Worms and charged him with the triple murders. Nicholls was also accused of murder, but knew that by turning supergrass and giving evidence, he'd get a tuppenny halfpenny sentence and be given a new name, a new life for himself and his family away from the threat of gangland revenge. During the run-up to the trial, underworld contracts were put out to kill Nicholls, now the prosecution's key witness, without whom there would be no case, ranging from £100,000 to £250,000. These were threats the cops took seriously. There are a few people I know who'd have happily bumped off Nicholls for that sort of cash, but finding him and his family was the problem. The police had him well tucked away in a safe house out of Essex, guarded by armed officers and protected by panic buttons, alarms and secret video cameras. His mum and other family members were followed by villains trying to find out where he was hiding out. Friends were offered money to say where he was, and apparently one sharp operator came up with the novel idea of sending a letter to his old address congratulating him on winning a free luxury holiday in Florida in the hope it would draw him out. But the police were monitoring every cough and fart of Nicholls 24 hours a day to keep him out of danger. He finally stepped into the witness box at the Old Bailey in September 1997 to give his version of what he said had happened at Retterdon almost 2 years earlier. I went along to the court a couple of times but found it really hard to bear. The picture being painted of Tony as a hard, ruthless killer and major drug dealer who didn't give a shit about anybody was not the Tony I knew. I have to be honest though and say that in the 6 months before his death I had seen glimpses of the monster that drugs had made of him. I knew that Tony and Craig had probably been involved in the murder of another drug dealer, Kevin Whittaker, whose body was found face down in a ditch near the big Ford plant at Dunton, near Basildon in November 1994. There were no marks of violence on his body, but a toxicology report showed that it had cocaine, ecstasy, lignocaine and ketamine in his bloodstream, and there was enough of each drug to kill him on his own, let alone in this cocktail. But after a police investigation, Whittaker's death was put down to an accidental overdose. The police had looked at the possibility of murder, but couldn't find a scrap of evidence. The file was officially closed. What had really happened, I found out later, was that Tony and Craig thought Whittaker had ripped them off on a drug deal. According to Tony Thompson's very good book on the Retterdon murders, Blogs 19, Tony and Craig captured Whittaker and accused him of stealing a kilo of puff. Tony was supposed to have said, "Like drugs, do you? Well then here, have some more," and injected him with some special K and cocaine and other stuff as he continued the incursion. When Whittaker slumped into unconsciousness, he was put into a hire car and driven to Dunstan and dragged into a ditch to die. The car, a Vauxhall Corsa, was valeted twice before it went back to the hire company. I was questioning myself about Whittaker's death, but I knew nothing. Even if I had, I don't suppose for a moment I'd have told them, because I still believed that the Tony Tucker I knew was a decent bloke. The jury in the Retterdon murder trial took 5 days of deliberations before announcing their verdict, that Mickey Steele and Jack Worms were the Essex executioners who'd blown my pal to pieces. Darren Nicholls' evidence had been believed, despite the defence team's attempt to paint him as a fantasist, a Walter Mitty who invented his involvement in a big-time crime to mask the reality of his real life as a total non-entity. Steele and Worms got life. Mr. Justice Hidden was scathing as he sentenced them. "You lured them to a quiet farm track and you executed them. They crossed your path and you showed them no mercy." Darren Nicholls vanished off the face of the earth. His birth certificate and his marriage licence has been deleted from all files. His passport details have been withdrawn. His insurance number no longer exists. But what does remain in the Essex underworld is a lingering doubt that the wrong people are in prison for the Range Rover killings, and that one day there will be another chapter added to this dreadful episode of murder and mayhem that may throw new light on this notorious crime.